Hey, good evening, everybody. This is Kevin Steinhauser working with you through Fiveable tonight, like every Tuesday night. Glad that you're here today. The exam's coming up very soon, less than 2 months away. I know a lot of students are on spring break this week or next week, so enjoy that, but let's keep on prepping for this exam. So we've pretty much covered everything that I want to cover in terms of the most important ways to get a 3, 4, or 5 on AP Language and Composition. So at the very beginning of Fiveable this year, in the fall, I had a few sessions on multiple choice practice. I've kind of gotten away from that for a while because we've been focusing really on the writing. However, I don't want to lose sight that multiple choice is 45% of your exam score. So it is a very important piece. The only way to get better at multiple choice is to practice and review once you've practiced. So it's not really something you study, it's something you deliberately practice. A lot of you are familiar with Malcolm Gladwell's book that discusses 10,000 hours to become a master at something. I don't know if we're going to hit 10,000 hours this year, but I think the takeaway, if you agree with that magic number or not, is that the more you practice, the better you will be. It's not something that's going to happen overnight. It's not something you can cram. So I'm glad you're here in March, and definitely keep pushing up through May 15th, getting ready for all aspects of this test. So multiple choice. I'll take 5 minutes or so to just run through some reminders, some strategies on game day, exam day, May 15th, and then we'll do a practice passage tonight. I'll show you how to read the passage very thoroughly and carefully, and then we'll review some questions. Each question that we'll go over, we'll discuss how to quickly and efficiently think through that question, because timing is a big component of AP Language and multiple choice, on multiple choice specifically. All right, so let me launch into my slides. As always, ask a question if you have any question about overall multiple choice strategies, or if you want to go back and review a question. If I want to quickly over it, you have a follow-up on it, please let me know. But I'm excited for some multiple choice practice tonight. Hey, after tonight, if you're on spring break next week, like my school is, we'll still be live Tuesday at 7 Eastern time. The next 2 weeks, we're doing rhetorical analysis review. What I want everyone thinking about is that rhetorical analysis review, or otherwise, make sure this is flipped. Every time that I am reading a high-level, college-level text, I am actually practicing multiple choice and rhetorical analysis. Because what rhetorical analysis is all about is first and foremost a high understanding of the text. Once you comprehend the text fully and get how it works together, then you can perform a high-level analysis. So this will not be, the next 2 weeks, will not be a repeat of lessons that we reviewed in the fall. This will be taking those lessons to the next level. I'm making sure I'm good to go. All right, so when you get your passage booklet, the first hour of your AP class, or test, I should say, you will have 60 minutes. I put on my slides as 52 to 55 questions, but it's generally been 55 questions, so that's absolutely what you should plan for. A little bit less than a minute per question. So the first minute of the test, make a game plan. First, take a second to ground yourself. Flip through the passage. I'm expecting there to be 4 passages. 4 passages equals 15 minutes per passage. Determine the order in which you'll take the test. You do not have to start with number 1 and end with number 55. What you want to do is look through the passages and then just really think through, how am I going to tackle this today? So again, I'm expecting there to be 4 passages. That means you have 15 minutes a passage on average. There might be a passage that you need 17 minutes with. That means there needs to be a passage that you take 13 minutes with. How to determine text difficulty is extremely important, because I recommend, if you should, at this point in the year, you should have taken a few, or at least one timed full-length practice test. If not, make sure you do that before March is up. That way you see, how am I doing with the timing? A lot of my students every year can do one passage in 15 minutes, but it's harder to do 2 in 30, even harder to do 3 in 45, and extremely hard to do 4 in 60 because of stamina and because not every text is created equally. So I want you to think about, what is my hardest text? A, I might need to invest more time in it, but B, I'm not going to put too much time into it. So a lot of students, I recommend saving the hardest text for last. If you have to guess on 7 questions, I want you guessing on 7 questions from the most difficult passage. So how do you determine the text difficulty? These are general rules or trends. The older the text, the more difficult the text. Likewise, I'm not saying the longer the text, the more difficult. I'm saying if the text is made up of longer paragraphs, that's more difficult. Because as a reader, then, you have to identify the shifts in topic or tone. Paragraphs basically do that work for you. They don't identify what the shift is, but they clue you in. There's a shift here. It's a new paragraph. I've seen AP language passages that are 80 lines long of 1 paragraph. That clues into me that's going to be tough. Consider starting with the easiest passage and working your way through the hardest. Taking 1 minute to just scope that out and make sure you've got a game plan goes a long way in maximizing the next 59 minutes. All right, this is an optional step. I have talked about this in a previous live session, but I want to make sure there's a lot of new people in and out each week. Skim through the question stems before you read. That's a step that some teachers really recommend. I used to recommend this a lot more strongly than I do today. What I've come to realize is my students, and a lot of students that I meet that I don't actually teach, do better by ignoring the questions, actually taking some time, maybe like half of the time with the passage, just to read, annotate, and understand. That's what we're going to do tonight. We're not looking at questions tonight. We're fully understanding the text. Because some students do this step, those students are able to say, okay, I'm going to use this question to guide my reading, but I'm still having a high level reading of the text. Why a lot of students I recommend away from this step is because a lot of students say, okay, I see that there's a question on line 20. Let me jump into line 20. Or let me quickly get to line 20 so I can spend some time there. I need you to read every word and read every word well if you want to be most successful here. At the same time, the best readers, so college level readers, understand that not every sentence is created equally. What I mean by that is I have to read every sentence, but I have to understand what sentence I can quickly move on and still get the base core meaning of a text. And one sentence I have to reread 2 or 3 times to feel comfortable because it's a key essential sentence. I'll walk you through a text tonight in which I'm saying, okay, this sentence I have to absolutely get. These sentences are just proving the same thing, so I'm quickly moving through those. All right, so once I've identified the order of my multiple choice test, so if I have 4 passages, boom, 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 here, boom, 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 here's the order, here's the lineup. This is what I do for every passage. First, absolutely take the 10 seconds it takes to think and absorb the background information provided. Start thinking about it. Of course, you're going to do that with the rhetorical analysis text. Who's the audience you're thinking? What's the purpose going to be? What is the subject? All of the soapstone things that you've talked about this year or I've covered with you in the fall, absolutely you should be thinking about. Because the same high-level reading of a multiple choice passage is the same high-level reading of a rhetorical analysis passage. If I'm thinking through a text and I'm critically thinking and understanding, that's what the goal of this class is. So with that in mind, step 2, read to comprehend. No matter if you do this optional step or not, it's not about answering the questions. It's about taking the time to read and comprehend. Annotate effectively. So the steps 2 and 3 are done at the same time. This takes 10-30 seconds for step 1. That gives you 8 or 9 minutes for steps 2 and 3. That actually seems like a lot of time because you have 15 minutes per passage. That's more than half of the time for high-level reading. I believe, and I've seen my students come to believe this every year, that if you spend 8 or 9 minutes in the multiple choice reading, things will go well for you in the question and answer. You'll be able to do it a lot quicker, especially if you annotate effectively. So annotations, I've talked about this through 5able before. Number one, there's two number ones, there's a typo. Number one, annotations will keep you engaged. And also number one, annotations will save you time. They're equally important. Okay, this is key. This is key for all readers. But a lot of times people say, hey, I don't disengage. I don't need to annotate. This is true for all readers. Annotations will save you time. If you're spending 8 or 9 minutes reading and annotating, you don't have a ton of time. You have 6 or 7 minutes to make sure you answer every question to the best of your ability. I'll show you how that's going to look tonight. You're going to flip back to your annotations, and you're going to make sure you're ready to go. The annotations are going to allow you to go very quickly through this exam. You go slow through the reading. I mean, not slow, with a sense of urgency. But you take your 8 or 9 minutes in the reading, and you briskly answer these questions. Let me just check on one thing. Great. All right, sorry, there's typos. They just got off numbering. So 3 steps of annotations. Underline key phrases that will anchor you in the text. I'll show you a model of that tonight. Bracket every chunk of text that's determined by you. You determine if there's a shift in topic or tone based on your high-level reading. For every bracket, you put a bullet point summary of what this chunk of text is doing. I'll show you what I would do tonight while we read an AP released exam. This is very important that I'm annotating quickly. I'm not like writing a novel on the page, but it's usable for me when I'm using the multiple choice. When I'm going through the multiple choice, I can flip back to the lines or the paragraph, identify, okay, this is what this is about. Let me reread or reskim and answer the question. And then I'll show you what I mean by this tonight. Clarify vague pronouns. I'm going to do that naturally, and I'm going to do it for myself as a comprehender of the text. Sometimes there's a deliberate question on it. If I don't think I'll remember what it or they is referring back to, I'll circle it. I'll draw a line back to the antecedent. The antecedent simply means the word that the pronoun refers back to. That's making sure I'm holding myself to a high standard of reading and comprehending. It also might save me time because I don't have time to do a high-level reading twice. I have to do it right the first time. So after reading, like I said, I have 6 or 7 minutes left. You flip back to your annotations, you quickly reread the context, you answer the question to the best of your ability, and you move on. You do not get lost in the question. If it's taking you more than a minute, you don't have more than a minute, because on average, this is taking me 30 seconds per question. Yes, that is hard. That is a big sense of urgency. So we've got to go quickly through this. We can go quickly through the questions, about 30 seconds a question, if we spend the time in and actually comprehend the text well. Couple more things before our practice. Use process of elimination to briskly move through the passage. When you're out of time, guess with the 1 or 2 remaining questions for the passage. I actually recommend don't save the entire last passage for last. Say, oh, shoot, I should be moving on. Maybe star the question in your test booklet, wherever you need to just tell yourself, if I have time, I'll go back to this question. Take your best guess and move on. Don't, if it's 15 minutes, don't take more than 17 minutes on a passage because that means you're already 2 minutes behind. You want to read every passage and get to see every question because even on the hardest passage, there will be questions you can get right. That's the way this exam works. On the easiest passage, there will be questions that you miss, most likely. On the hardest passage, there will be questions you get right. Only if you get to read the passage and work through it. So the goal is 15 minutes a question. So a lot of times you would say, kind of like what I said at the beginning, guess, if you have to guess on 10, guess on the hardest passage. But my goal is that you're briskly moving about 15 minutes per passage. Maybe you have to guess on 1 or 2 here or there. So that way you get to see every question and have a fair shot at them. All right, time to practice. I'm going to read on the left an AP released multiple choice passage. I would bracket this on the packet, and here'd be my marginal annotations. Sometimes mine are a little bit longer. I think you'd be able to abbreviate them even more, but I wanted to make sure I was being clear because if you download the slides or just look at this later, I want this to be a standalone product as well. But less is more here. Really be thoughtful about what you're annotating. All right, take the 10 or 30 seconds to read the background info. I'm going to read the entire piece. It's not super long. It's several slides though. I'm going to emphasize on what I would underline and why. Again, less is more here. And then what I annotate and why. All right, so the background piece, 10 or 30 seconds. I'm reading, I'm thinking. The following passage is taken from a recent book about the writing habits of American women in the 19th century. So the first thing I'm thinking, just like I would with the rhetorical analysis passage, who might the audience be? It doesn't tell us. What is the American expectations of women in the 19th century? 19th century equals 1800s. So I'm just thinking, what are women's rights and roles at the time? And how is that going to play into this passage? I don't know what the purpose of this passage is yet, but that's going to be what I'm thinking before I start. All right, let's go ahead and start reading. Again, emphasizing what I'm underlining and what I'm annotating. Literary activities not only permeated daily life, they did so in ways that were at once participatory and collaborative. From early ages, middle-class boys and girls were expected to produce written work. In addition to school essays, there were poems written to order for family celebrations, as well as word games, like writing nonsense verses and alternate lines, all of which required verbal facility. These circumstances were of singular importance for women. All right, so already I'm seeing both boys and girls wrote. This is a children's thing, but then by the end it says, okay, these were especially important for women. That's what I'm capturing very quickly on my annotations. Again, you might be able to do it more quickly and efficiently than I am. The point is I'm spending the time reading. Annotations should take me like 20 seconds per paragraph at the most, or I should say for chunk of text. This passage today is split into paragraphs, so it's more friendly, although it's from the 1800s. I'm sorry, it's about the 1800s, but it's from a recent book. So this being a recent book, it's written more recently than the 1800s. That's important. So if I'm going in order, I'm identifying this is actually going to be one of the easier passages because I'm telling you it's split into smaller paragraphs and it's actually from a recent work. Also, I have background knowledge on this, maybe not on writing habits of women, but definitely women's rights and roles in the 19th century. Okay, so this is a technique I want to teach you tonight. Don't feel like you have to underline every word of a sentence. Underline the key phrases. I actually underline phrases that still stand alone. Let's read, and I skipped a couple words. Literary activities permeated daily life. When I flip back to this paragraph during the multiple choice round, I will be able to just read that underlined portion and say, yes, this is what this paragraph's about. And then I underline here, middle-class boys and girls were expected to produce written work. I can jump back in and say, skim these 3 sentences or partial sentences that I've underlined and have a strong understanding of this paragraph. So the final one is, especially for women, these are lining up intentionally because my annotations and underlines are pulling out the most essential pieces of information before moving on to the next paragraph. All right, I've actually chunked it here. This is still the first paragraph. So I've identified a shift here. So I know I just said this has many paragraphs. Even so, the first one was long, so I had to split it into 2 sections. By the late 19th century, diary and letter writing had become predominantly female arts. I underlined just that part because I want to get to the core of the sentence and the core of the ideas. If women did not monopolize them, they were thought to have special talents or responsibilities for their performance. Once a common spiritual exercise for both sexes, diary keeping had evolved into something of a calling for female adolescents of the comfortable classes. You see, I did not for either underline the whole sentence. I'm getting to the core phrase, the thing that I can quickly reread and get the big picture of this chunk of text. My annotation aligned with my underlines. Writing became a female activity. You might go faster than me. If you understand this and have a high believability that you can go faster, do it. What I mean is you might say writing hyphen female. And if you're going to be able to look at your 2 sentences that you underlined in that, move on. Annotate, save yourself time as much as you can. All right. This is actually kind of counter to what I had said earlier about the paragraphs. Part 3 of paragraph 1. In this passage, this was by far the longest paragraph, so I had to split it up. Once we get past here, the paragraphs start to split up in a much more friendly way. So let's end paragraph 1. Often presented by parents as gifts to girls in their early teens, diaries were sanctioned as a technique for promoting discipline and character, a practice that might aid in the transition from sometimes ornery adolescence to more pliant womanhood. In their pages, girls recorded, sometimes painfully, their struggles to be good, to settle gnawing religious doubts, to subdue their pride or resentment at parental authority. So here's what I'm pulling out. Diaries were sanctioned as a technique for promoting discipline and character. And then jump down here with me. I'm again taking out extra phrasing and I'm going to get to the core of the sentence. Girls recorded their struggles to be good. Now let's tie this in together. Again, this is long. You might be able to condense your annotation. Diaries were given to girls to help them become women. Now I have to have a higher level reading than just this, but this is parsing down what I must understand before moving on. Again, I'm doing this as fast as I can. I have to read this entire text and annotate effectively in about 8 or 9 minutes. All right, this is the new paragraph. Whatever the intent of adults, by fostering exploration of inner lives, diaries often promoted self-reflection of an individualistic sort in ways that allowed for a more assertive female subjectivity. Remember, subjective means bias. That's a word I need you all to know. Objective, not biased. Subjective, biased. In their presumably secret pages, girls could express anger and try out a variety of identities, some of them at least mildly subversive. Perhaps critics were right to consider diaries sufficiently dangerous to warn against them, as some did in the 1870s. All right, so I'm just underlining the most important sentence or partial sentence here, and then I'm aligning diaries allowed girls to express a variety of emotions. All right, this is another paragraph. So that was a short one. Here's a short one. Diaries assumed their greatest importance during adolescence, but women of all ages were often prodigious letter writers. As those charged with the emotional well-being of extended as well as nuclear families, women kept in touch with absent members and distant relatives. The pattern began in youth. Boys might be expected to write letters, but their lapses were more readily tolerated than those of their sisters. So, let's go back to what I've underlined. Nothing is a complete sentence here. I have 3 partial sentences. Let's get to the core of this paragraph. Women of all ages were often prodigious letter writers. Second, women kept in touch with absent members and distant relatives. The pattern, I have to understand this pattern. I might circle this pattern and draw a line to women kept in touch. However, I want to make sure I understand this pattern is what I've just read. The pattern began in youth. In other words, women in youth started to write, to keep in touch, to deal with family relations, etc. My annotation simply, women wrote letters to keep in touch with extended family. Again, that's kind of verbose for an annotation, just because I want this to stand alone. But if I'm actually annotating under a time setting, I might say, women wrote letters dash family, something like that. All right, this, let's look at it. This is part of this paragraph, so I've identified the chunk here. This is the end of a 2 paragraph here. In a mobile society that detached people from their points of origin, women's letters, let me read that again. In a mobile society that detached people from their points of origin, women's letters often constituted the primary means of communication between family members. As the principal letter writers, or the chief letter writers, Women not only demonstrated their vaunted verbal facility, but gained authority in negotiating family matters. Letters helped women, my annotation, letters helped women gain authority in the family. You might be able to parse that down again if you're going quickly. You might even say gained authority and draw a big star or big line next to what I underlined. This is what I have to take away. They demonstrated their verbal facility. They gained authority in family matters. Okay, this is a new paragraph. Diary keeping and letter writing originated in gendered obligations, but they were often so much more. In addition to any personal satisfaction they brought, these genres enhanced powers of observation and self-reflection. Self-conscious about their letters, which they knew would be read aloud or passed around among family members, young women labored over their literary productions. So I've underlined two things. This one was a short topic sentence, so I just underlined it. Diary keeping and letter writing originated in gendered obligations. And then here, these genres enhanced. So I'm talking about letter writing is the genre. Enhanced powers of observation and self-reflection. I'm tying these two things together. Oh, I guess the second genre would be diary keeping. But the one that I can tell that we're focusing on the most is letter writing based on the previous paragraph. So that's my annotation. Letter writing led to reflection. This is, again, the first and last paragraph were long, so I'm splitting this one up. This is part 2 of the final paragraph. Observant correspondents, like Alice Hamilton, became vivid storytellers who set their scenes with care, created characters out of themselves and the people they met, and adjusted their narratives to and for their intended audience. Earlier in the century, in just this manner, letter writing proved to be an important training ground for Harriet Beecher Stowe, who incorporated techniques she had perfected in her correspondence into her domestic fiction. In creating themselves in and through their diaries and letters, this is both for themselves and for others, women often drew on models available to them from literature. In this way, reading and writing converged. So I've underlined 3 things. Let's hit the highlights. Observant correspondents became vivid storytellers. You might do what I've done in the past and just underline those 5 words and skip right over her. I don't know who she is. Like if I'm reading this, I don't have to know who she is to be effective here. I can tell she's a what? Vivid storyteller. Observant correspondent. That's the point. And then jumping down, in creating themselves in and through their diaries and letters, again, I'm cutting out the non-essential phrase. In creating themselves in and through their diaries and letters, women often drew on models available to them from literature. And then I just underlined the last sentence because it's short, sweet, and very clear. Reading and writing converged. Letter writing led to novel writing. This sums it up greatly. That's why I underlined it. Reading and writing converged. Before I go to the question, so I had 2 parts to this very big paragraph. Not every chunk should be created equal. Identify when there's a shift in topic or tone. So in this last paragraph, for example, first I'm talking broadly, letter writing led to reflection, but then I'm moving on to from reflection to actual literature and novel writing in this final section. Okay, what we're going to do is look at a question, not look at A, B, C, and D, flip back to our annotations, have the answer in our head, and then see which one best aligns. So in your head, don't look at A, B, C, D, and E. This is how I highly recommend you approach the multiple choice. Take 15 seconds. I mean, I know that sounds really crazy and fast, and it is, to get the answer in your head, and then take 15 seconds. I know that's super crazy fast, to quickly read through A, B, C, D, E, figure out what you think is the best answer. We're going to do that together today. The author uses the not only construction in line 1, 2, flipping to annotations. What I would do, I look at line 1, it's not only. I'm going to read the first sentence. I'm going to get my answer. Literary activities not only permeated daily life, they did so in ways that were at once participatory and collaborative. This is like a not only, but also type of sentence. So it permeated daily life and it was collaborative. Let's go back, take 15 seconds, look through A, B, C, D, and E. What do you think is the answer? Five seconds. All right, the answer is B. Let's look at it. Convey a heightened degree of involvement in shared literary activities during a period. So the period is here. We did have to read the context. 19th century. The heightened degree of involvement is what should have clued us in. Participatory and collaborative are basically synonyms for involvement. Again, I'm going to go through a few and I'll check if there's any questions. Please ask if there's any you want to slow down on. All right. Same thing. Don't look at A, B, C, D, E. Let's look at the answer. I'm sorry, let's look at the question and then our annotations. Which statement best describes the main idea of the first paragraph? I don't have time to reread the entire thing. I'm already in it. The nice part about College Board is that these are chronological questions. They will ask you in order. So I know what the first sentence is. Let's just skim my annotations. Middle class boys, okay, we talked about them. And then we talked about women. That's what my annotations say. So this is about literary activities that were participatory. Boys and girls wrote about or just wrote often. These circumstances were of singular importance for women. With that reminder in mind, take 15 seconds. A, B, C, D, or E. What do you think is the main idea of the first paragraph? Five seconds. Okay, the answer is C. Let's take a look. What is the main idea? Writing tasks featured prominently in children's lives. A little tricky because we ended talking about women. But primarily here, lines 1 to 10, that's what we're talking about. Children. It's not B because it's not talking about their educational opportunities based on class. It's actually not addressing that they grew older. But let's be clear. And we're not just talking about when they get, let me put it this way. When they get older, it's more on the women. So it diverges. So A is not the correct answer. If it was women, maybe we'd be talking. Definitely not D. That's not what it's talking about. In addition to school essays. So school and home is what I want to focus on here. And then also the women rather than men study literature throughout their lives. That's true in the first in the entire passage, but in the first paragraph, it's more emphasizing children. Let's look at number 3. Lines 12 to 15. And then they give you the beginning and end. State that women were. All I'm going to do is flip back. Let's read lines 12 to 15. So I go back to my annotations. Oops. Oh, this is one that I have not annotated. Before I read, skim. This section saying writing became a female activity. Let's read this sentence. If women did not monopolize them, they were thought to have special talents or responsibilities for their performance. If women, I'm just going to say it again. If women did not monopolize them, what's them? Letter writing, diary writing. They were thought to have special talents or responsibilities for their performance. 15 seconds. What do you think? Five seconds. Okay, 15 seconds might seem really fast. It might seem like I had it after 10 seconds. This should be going very quickly. Make sure you read every word if possible, A, B, C, D, and E, but do what I did with number 2, quickly process out, obviously on your paper, crossing them out as soon as you realize there's something wrong with them. 4 questions or answer stems will be wrong. Sometimes you might hear a teacher say, some are true, but choose the best one. Well, really what that means is there's going to be part of an answer that's true. And that's why it's tricky. Choose the one that's fully true all the way. So the answer number 3 is E. Lines 12 to 15 state that women were considered to have particular facility for writing letters and diary entries. Facility means capability. Special talents is a synonym for facility here. All right, let's do number 4. After number 4, I'll pause. If there's any questions on the first 4, we'll address them at that time. So please make sure you do ask if there's any you want to look at again, or any that maybe tripped you up and you just want to double check what you're thinking. All right, in lines 26 to 35, whatever to 1870s. This is longer. We're going to do a quick reread of it. The author suggests that. So we're going to reread it. We're going to ground ourselves, and we're going to quickly process, eliminate our way through A, B, C, D, 26 to 35. Oh, that's this entire thing. I've got to do it quickly. I'm going to emphasize my annotations first and then reread. Diaries allowed girls to express a variety of emotions. Whatever the intent of adults, by fostering exploration of inner lives, diaries often promoted self-reflection of an individualistic sort in ways that allowed for a more assertive female subjectivity. Remember, that's bias. In their presumably secret pages, girls could express anger and try out a variety of identities. Some of them at least mildly subversive. Pause. I think we read enough. 15 seconds. What do you think? Five seconds. Okay, the answer here, A. Diaries helped girls experiment privately with different personas. So girls were experimenting with different personas when they were taking on different identities. It says that right here. Identities and personas are direct synonyms. Some of us might be tempted to put B. Girls were punished for voicing rebellious thoughts. They voiced rebellious thoughts, but there's no evidence here that they're punished for it. All right, let's just pause and answer our question. Thank you for the question. Let's look at the question together, guys. So we're going to go back to number 3. Every few questions we'll do this. Please let me know if there's any you just want to double check. I appreciate the question. So for questions like number 3, we're going to go right back to it. How can one get better at picking the most true one in such a short amount of time? Let's go back, and that's a great question. It's super tough to do that. So number 3. Okay. 12 to 15, state that women were. Remember, our answer is E. Considered to have a particular facility for writing letters and diary entries. Here's what we need to do. Let's do it the same way we've been doing it. So read this question. Don't even look at A, B, C, D, E. Get your answer in your head. State that women were. 12 to 15. Take 15 seconds to just think of your answer. If women did not monopolize them, they were thought to have special talents or responsibilities. So I should be able to read this and say, okay, this sentence is talking about women's talents and responsibilities. Which one of these lines up with talents and responsibilities? And I just got to quickly go through this. I know it's super fast. Diaries help girls experiment. Oops, I'm on the wrong one. Here we go. Viewed as oddities if they did not write more entertaining. Okay, oddities, cross it out. That's not what the sentence is saying. Judged critically if they did not write, cross it out. It's not talking about judging. Entrusted with more household obligations if they excelled in. I'm not sure. Let's skip it. Regarded as responsible for the most important correspondence, despite being less likely to write. This is why it's wrong. Being less likely to write is incorrect. So I do have to read every word. The first part seems maybe okay. They're responsible for the most important correspondence. They are more likely to write than men. So D is wrong. I'm between C and E. Considered to have a particular facility for writing letters and diary entries. I just have to know, guys, honestly, that facility means capability. This is a word that College Board uses repeatedly in both passages and their question stems. So that's a word to know. Facility, and especially older context, equals ability. That automatically is going to give me my answer because it's a direct synonym. But there's going to be times where you're like, okay, I know it's not A, B, and E. You're going to go with your gut between C and E and move on. Let's be honest. If you don't know what facility is now, you're not going to know in a minute. So you're quickly going through this. The reason I can do this so quickly is because I've had a high level reading of the text. This literally took me 10, 15 seconds. I read it, I summarized it in my head, I found the one that best fit my summary. Great question. If there's another question like with that in mind that you would like to look through, Natalie or anybody else, please let me know. That's a great question. There's no easy answer, unfortunately, to getting better in terms of like speed, other than practice. So every reading passage that you have in any class, I would start practicing, because timing is so important, every time you read a timed environment. Time yourself, see how well you can read it under a time setting. The faster you read and the higher level you comprehend during that quick time, the better this is going to go. The more time you have, obviously, the better. But maximize your minutes by putting the time into the reading comprehension. This is going to go much quicker. I can delete if I've fully understood the passage. Okay, let's go to question 5. And after a few, I'll just check if there's questions. All right, what is the effect of putting the word presumably in parentheses? All I'm going to do is look at line 30. So in this chunk, and I'm doing this as fast as I can, diaries allowed girls to express a variety of emotions. Let's jump in. We just read this, so that's the nice part. I don't have to reread this really for comprehension twice. I'm just really thinking about it as I'm reading. Why is this in parentheses? In their presumably secret pages, girls could express anger and try out a variety of identities, some of them at least mildly subversive. In their presumably secret pages, what do you think? 15 seconds. Three seconds. And time. Answer C. To raise doubts about whether an assumption is warranted. Okay, let's just do that process of elimination for this one. So as I'm going through, in their presumably secret pages, girls could express anger and try out a variety of identities, some of them at least mildly subversive. I'm just thinking, okay, it's in parentheses because just an advanced reading of this would say, if I asked you why is in parentheses, your answer would be, well, because maybe they weren't secret. That should be how I read that. So now I just got to go back through. Which one says, well, maybe they weren't secret? To indicate that a possibility is not worth considering, that doesn't make sense. Cross it out. To acknowledge the strength of an opposing viewpoint, there's no opposing viewpoint here. Cross it out. To raise doubts about whether an assumption is warranted, the assumption is that it's private or secret. That's our answer here. Warranted means like justified. To underscore a compelling rationale for an argument. Okay, this is convoluted language. So I've got to, the reason I have you all get your answer in your own head is to not let College Board get in your head. Answer the question and then see which one best aligns to your answer. Again, I think you'd all tell me, why is presumably in parentheses? Well, it's because you should question, is it actually secret? This is just convoluted language. Cross it out. to draw attention for additional evidence that's not what it is either. There's clearly only one right answer here. So this one, there is no second best answer in my opinion. There's one right answer and 4 convoluted language answers. If you didn't think of C, have a strong answer in your head and then take 15 seconds to just choose which one aligns with my answer. Let's do a couple more before we pull back. Number 6. Which of the following best describes the rhetorical function or purpose of the last sentence of the second paragraph? Let's go to that slide. The last sentence of the second paragraph. Again, my annotations say diaries allowed girls to express a variety of emotions. Now let's target it in. Perhaps critics were right to consider diaries sufficiently dangerous to warn against them, as some did in the 1870s. What's the function of this paragraph? We've been in this whole paragraph for like 3 questions now. Let's end strong. 15 seconds. What is the function of this sentence? This one might take longer. Let's take 20 seconds. There's more to read here. Time, answer, C. As I'm reading through these, I hope I'm crossing out A, crossing out B, keeping C, and just saying, is D better than C? No. Is E better than C? No. Let's read C. It ironically acknowledges the perceptiveness of critics while implicitly criticizing their efforts to regulate female conduct. Let's just go back. This is a tough question. Again, you're not supposed to get all of these right, even with this high-level reading and high-level thought process. So maybe we've done 6 so far. Maybe you've gotten 3 or 4 right. Maybe you've gotten more. Maybe you've gotten less. When you are working through this, the goal is not 100%. The goal for a 3 on the exam is about 55% correct. That shows how hard this exam is. That is college level. But let's see how we're working through this. Perhaps critics were right to consider diaries sufficiently dangerous to warn against them, as some did in the 1870s. So this is just saying ironic, like, yeah, maybe critics were right. This author is essentially criticizing the critics. You have to have a high-level reading of this text. This type of question separates the average reader from the great reader. Or if I can put it a different way, the high school level reader from the college level reader. So if you got this wrong, you might even be a college level reader, because a college level reader gets 55% of these questions right about. With that in mind, this separates the base college level reader to like the great college level reader. I have to have a high understanding that he's being or she is being critical here of the critics. How do I know that? Let's read. Perhaps critics were right to consider diaries sufficiently dangerous to warn against them, as some did in the 1870s. Perhaps critics were right to consider the entire work as a whole is kind of just reporting the facts. But there's a very implicit, which is the word from our question, criticism here. So explicit means direct. You have to just read between the lines here implicitly to realize, oh, is it that wrong for girls to experiment with identities and rebellion? Probably not. Let's criticize the critics. Let's do one more and let's see if there's any questions. So number 7. We're going to have to go faster after number 7 because I want to just show you a bunch of practice. I'll have the slides posted. You can go back and review these on your own time. Like if you want to watch the replay. I want to get through all of them tonight, so we're going to start going faster after number 7. In line 41, the pattern refers to. So we finished paragraph 2. Let's just go back to the next paragraph, line 41. Let's find the word pattern. Boom. Women wrote letters to keep in touch with extended family. Let's just read. The pattern began in youth. Oh, wait, I remember this. When I read this, I said, what pattern? The pattern of women writing to keep in touch with families. Okay, which one is it? 15 seconds. 5 seconds. And time. This one was easy, much easier than the one number 6. The answer is B. Responsibility women had for maintaining family connections. I literally told you the answer, didn't I? Just through a high-level reading of the text. I tracked the pattern back to this sentence. All right, let's pause. Let's see if there's any questions on those few. Looks like there are not. We're going to go faster now because I do want to end close to 6 tonight. This is a pretty thorough live session. So all I'm going to do is I'm not going to use process of elimination. I'm not going to explain it. I will leave this live session up so you'll have this entire resource if you want to go back and just check this out. If I'm going too fast through a question, I want to make sure everyone can see all, I believe, 13 questions I have tonight. So we actually have 6 left. All right, the third paragraph, lines 36 to 49, asserts that letter writing was significant because it, that's here, this is the paragraph, or this is at least the first part of the paragraph. Letters helped women gain authority in the family. Let's just read this. Women not only demonstrated their vaunted verbal facility, but gained authority in negotiating family matters. Focusing on my annotations. Well, what's the answer? 15 seconds. Five seconds or less. Time's up. A, let's just read A. Provided women with a means of exercising power as individuals. Power is a synonym for authority. I hope that you're seeing there's a lot of synonyms in the answer. Now, I'm not saying go searching for synonyms, but that helps you verify that you've got the correct answer if it's aligning. So my answer here should be asserts that letter writing was significant because it, if you put this in your own words, you'd say gained authority. Which one says gained authority? Exercises power. 9. The author uses the word obligations in line 51 to expand on the meaning of. I have to read this in context. Diary keeping and letter writing originated in gender obligations. Let's actually do this one together. Letter writing led to reflection. The answer is A. I'm going to show you that now for this one. Charge from line 38. So what we just don't have time to go back to that right now. So what I want to do this together is because I just need to go back quickly. These do take longer to the word charged, and see charged means obligations. Let's go back and do that. Go all the way back real quick. Right here. As those charged, in other words, put in charge of the emotional well-being, and I've got obligations. Diary keeping originated in gender obligations. They were put in charge of it. That's how I have to track the text. All right, and let's do normal. In the last paragraph, the author mentions Alice Hamilton and Harriet Beecher Stowe because they, I'm just doing this, letter writing led to novel writing. Why did she mention Alice Hamilton and Harriet Beecher Stowe? Go. There's only 4 here, A, B, C, or D. Oops, I just told you the answer, sorry. Look at them all, though. Look at them all. All right, so I flashed the answer up on accident. Illustrate how the art of letter writing nurtured literary achievement. I just meant to go back to here. Letter writing led to novel writing. Novel writing, literary achievement. We've got this. Number 11. In lines 66 to 70, the author describes the relationship between, let's just take a stab at this, letter writing and novel writing. Let's see what we think. 5 seconds. Time. B. Which one talks about what I annotated? I annotated well. I promise you all this. I did not look through the questions and then annotate to make it look good. I annotated this exactly, and we've seen how effective that was, how these are lining up, I hope. Letter writing led to novel writing. That took me 10 seconds to write. B. Literature, novel writing, that inspired women in the diaries and letters women produced, aka letter writing. 12 and 13, I'm not flipping back to the text for. So that frees me up some time. These are overall questions. You don't have time to reread, the whole passage. Which statement best sums up the central argument of the passage? Okay, let's take 20 seconds and let's get this one right. Go ahead. Five seconds. Take your best guess. If I had time, I would go over these more thoroughly. This is a prime example of a question stem or a question that has question stems that many question stems have something that's true in it, but there's only one that is best associated with the central idea. So a lot of these might be supporting details, but not the central argument of the passage. The central argument is A. Genres defined as feminine, aka diary and letter writing, gave women the chance to assert their influence and express themselves. They did that twofold, both with literature and that was for like only some women, right? But also with the family relations that most women were a part of. Last question tonight. Take your best guess at this. What is the overall tone of the passage? Just think about what we read. Ten seconds. Okay, two pieces of advice here. One, know as many tone words as you can. If you've seen irreverent, for example, pop up 10 times this year, memorize what irreverent means. I'm a teacher who very much says AP language is not about memorizing words. I do create the exception of tone words. Tone words, the more that you know, the better this is going to go. Rule 2, if there's a word that you don't know, don't guess that answer. They often have words that to throw you. This word in D, most of you, I guess I shouldn't assume that, but most students that I meet don't know what that word means. In fact, it might be the first time they've seen that word. That means highly critical. But we've talked about that before. It's not D, because highly critical is not really what she's doing. There's some implicit criticism, but really it's just C, informative and assured. Assured means, hey, she is sure of her points, and she's really just laying out the information here. All right, let's wrap up tonight. Let's get ready for next week. It's exactly, well, I said 6 o'clock because it's 6 o'clock my time, but 8 o'clock Eastern time. I often go a little bit shorter, but tonight I want to make sure we really did a good multiple choice practice. If you're a 500 Plus member, this is going to be uploaded on the as for the slides to get or just the live session to review. I appreciate you all being here to deliberately practice. I hope you can come back the next 2 weeks, spring break or not. We're going to keep on chugging. We're really close to the exam with a final review, or not final review, but a very deep dive to a high level rhetorical analysis practice. We're going to practice a high level reading, just like we did tonight, but through the rhetorical analysis lens. All right, everybody, great work tonight. I will see you all next Tuesday. Have a great rest of the week.